speech started the topic continuation.
Switch to the phone call అని వచ్చింది ఇక్కడ. You have a slow connection.
Okay.
Sorry, Praveen, we lost your audio. We are not able to hear you, Praveen. Of course, the one who doesn't need any introduction keeps himself updated on all the advancements of diabetes, not only diabetes, even the comorbidities of diabetes. And he has done more than 3,000 programs, such programs like webinars or academic programs. He has completed and on various platforms such as GoToWebinar or meetings or even the social media platforms as well, and even on the Facebook as well. So he's very active. Even the TV channels also you could see Dr. Sab very frequently, and he's very passionate himself in integrating all these studies from the doctors on the therapy, on the diagnosis and the treatment of diabetes. So this is none other than our Krishna Mohan sir, our own Krishna Mohan sir. He doesn't need any introduction, but as a formality, I'm just doing it. So welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Praveen, for your kind introduction. So, very pleasant good evening, dear my friends and fellow colleagues. It's a great moment, great pleasure for me to be with you this evening.
Presentation on, sir.
Yeah, you can just move on to, yeah.
Sir, I kept your presentation.
Yeah.
Could you see the presentation, sir? Hypoglycemia and glycemic variability.
Yeah, but the screen is very small here. Okay. You need to.
Yes, sir.
Screen కొంచెం. Yeah. Today we'll talk about the hypoglycemia and the glycemic variability, which are the key obstacles to attaining the target or the goals. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Praveen, next slide, please. Yeah. Now let's take a look on the Origin trial. Origin trial was done by the Sanofi people taking this insulin glargine U100 way back in 2003, and the study was complete by 2011. And very fortunately, I happened to be one of the principal investigators of this Origin trial. So, Origin trial is nothing but the outcome reductions with an initial glargine intervention, and the results of this particular Origin trial were released in the 72nd American Diabetes Association scientific sessions held at the Philadelphia on June 11th actually. So it was a more than 6 year randomized controlled design study to assess the effects of treatment with insulin glargine versus the standard care and these cardiovascular outcomes. And there was no association between the insulin glargine and the increased risk of cancer and the total participants were 12,500 and 40 countries were involved and more than 575 centers were involved in this particular trial and this is supposed to be the world's longest and the largest clinical trial in pre and early diabetes mellitus, and it has shown the results like increased incidence of hypoglycemia from moderate to severe.
Self-muted, sir. Krishnamohan, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Your audio has been muted there. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Now you're audible.
Okay. So then go to the previous slide, please.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Previous slide. Origin trial. Okay, yeah. So on an average, the inference is one that insulin glargine is nowhere related to cancer, and there was a an article published in Diabetologia somewhere around 2001-2002 that insulin glargine is carcinogenic. So Sanofi people wanted to prove that insulin glargine is not carcinogenic. So they did a trial on a large basis. That was the origin trial, and that's good and all. It was not associated with any incidence of that. Was incidence of cancer was zero, absolutely zero with insulin glargine. But incidentally, we found the increased incidence of hypoglycemia, the moderate or severe hypoglycemia, and there was an increased risk of weight gain also seen that particular trial. So this was done with glargine U100, and it clearly showed the incidence of hypoglycemia. The original article published in the NEJM, New England Journal of Medicine, the basal insulin and the cardiovascular and other outcomes in dysglycemia. You can clearly see in this chart that the total episodes during the follow-up with regards to the severe hypoglycemia, it was the standard care was 113, whereas in the glargine group it was shown to be like 359 had this, and total episodes during the follow-up the number was 134 in the standard care, and it is 457, very significantly high when compared to the standard care with insulin glargine U100. So you can clearly see that the incidence of hypoglycemia was a big barrier in the study. So the conclusions, when used to target normal fasting plasma glucose levels for more than 6 years, insulin glargine had a neutral effect on the cardiovascular outcomes and cancers. And that was the biggest inference. We were literally shocked by this outcome actually, because all the time prior to origin trial we used to be under impression that insulin had some the impact on the cardiovascular outcomes, and origin trial has proved any beyond doubt that it has no significant outcomes at all. It's very neutral to cardiovascular outcomes like our DPP4 inhibitors or something else, okay? And there was no incidence of cancers, but although it reduced the new onset diabetes, insulin glargine it increased the hypoglycemia and the modestly increased weight. That was funded by Sanofi. I had already told you the origin, and so these were published in the NEJM, that is New England Journal of Medicine, in the year 2012. Okay, next slide please. So here is a question for everybody, all the participants. In our clinical practice, what percentage of type 2 diabetes patients report hypoglycemia? So is it less than 10%? Is it 20 to 40%? Or is it 40 to 70%? Or is it more than 70%. So it depends on the dose you put the patient on, and it depends on the counseling, how you counsel the patient before you initiate an insulin. So in my practice, it's somewhere around some less than 20% of the people they experience hypoglycemia. So next slide, please. So you can clearly see in this bar diagram the percentage of patients with hypoglycemia in India. So when you look at the parameters like, okay, when type 1 diabetes mellitus when compared to the type 2 diabetes mellitus, the light blue is the type 1 diabetes mellitus and the type 2 is depicted in the navy blue, the dark blue color. You can see the hypoglycemia 4 weeks before the baseline, and any hypoglycemia it was 66.3% in type 1 diabetes and 46.4%, 46.6% in the type 2 diabetes. In non-severe hypoglycemia, the 59.8% of type 1 people were suffering from hypoglycemia, and when compared to the type 2 it was 44.9. When compared to the nocturnal hypoglycemias, the type 1 had 38%, whereas the type 2 had 14.3%, because it is seen more in type 1 because type 1 are totally insulinopenic. So they are totally on insulin, and we try to go for a intensive control, and naturally intensive control is always associated with a risk of the nocturnal hypoglycemia or the severe hypoglycemia or even the moderate. Any degree of hypoglycemia is more seen in type 1 patients when compared to the type 2 patients. On the right hand side, you can see this the hypoglycemia 6 months before the baseline. You can see again the type 1, it is severe hypoglycemia was seen in 24.8% of the type 1 diabetes and 20.6% with severe hypoglycemia in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients, and the subjects were 112, whereas in case of type 1 diabetes, and the subjects taken in type 2 diabetes was 2808, and the hospital admission which required the hypoglycemia which required hospital admission, that is severe hypoglycemia where the patient is totally unconscious and he has to get admitted into the hospital. The incidence of type 1 was the hospital admission for hypoglycemia was 14.7%, whereas in type 2 it was 7.1%. So next slide, please. So the biggest fear what we encounter in the day-to-day clinical practice is the fear of hypoglycemia. Whenever we try to achieve the good glycemic control, like you want to keep the A1C somewhere around 7 or less than 7%, you definitely get into, your patient always gets into the hypoglycemia, and the fear of hypoglycemia conflicts with treatment success for both patients and clinicians. Thereby it poses a very big challenge for the treating clinicians, let it be physicians, let it be general practitioners, let it be diabetologists, or let it be endocrinologists, whoever they deal with this particular treatment of diabetes. The biggest barrier would be the fear of hypoglycemia. It is from both the sides. It is from the patient side as well as the doctor side. And you can clearly see in these bar diagrams again, the type 1 is depicted in the dark blue and the type 2 is depicted in the brown color. You can see the percentage of the patients decreasing their insulin dose following a hypoglycemic event. So naturally they tend to get into a panicky situation after they get a hypoglycemic event, and they definitely decrease the dose of insulin. Soon after they get relief from the hypoglycemia. You can see here the non-severe hypoglycemic episodes when compared to the severe hypoglycemic episodes, and the insulin dose was reduced by 74% in T1DM and 43% in T2DM. This is with regards to the non-severe hypoglycemic episodes. And with severe episodes, severe hypoglycemic episodes, T1DM was 79%, whereas T2DM was 58%. And on the right hand side, you can see this. They say, I would treat my patients more aggressively if there was no concern about hypoglycemia. It is everybody's feeling, every clinician's feeling. The biggest barrier, the biggest hurdle to achieve a tight glycemic control, to prevent the complications or to get back to the normal glycemia, the biggest barrier would be the hypoglycemia. But for that, everybody would reach the targets. And you can see the horizontal graphs. You can see like the primary care physicians, it is 72%, and the diabetes specialist, it is 79%. More or less, it is same. And the response to hypoglycemia by the people with type 2 diabetes mellitus during the prospective period, you can see very clearly the graph. The reduced insulin dose, they reduced by 36.7% of the type 1 patients. They just reduced their dose. And when it comes to the skipping of insulin injections, totally avoiding the insulin injections, it is 11.7%. And the increased blood glucose monitoring, that is SMBG, self monitoring of blood glucose, they once the patient becomes panic, he tends to monitor very frequently, and that is shown to be like the increased monitoring of self blood glucose monitoring has drastically has improved to 60.9%. See the fear of hypoglycemia. Once the patient experiences hypoglycemia, he is scared to take the next dose of insulin. That becomes the biggest barrier, that becomes the biggest obstacle for the clinician to reach the normoglycemia, or to get the patient to the target, or to prevent the future complications. This is the biggest barrier. So next slide please, Praveen. Next slide please.
Sir, your voice has gone mute, sir.
Oh,
Sir,
this is creating lot of technical glitches.
Here,
yes.
Am I audible, Praveen?
Audible. Yes, audible.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So, in this nice slide, you can see the consequences of hypoglycemia. They present a considerable burden to the patients and society. And in the left hand side, you can see the tip of the iceberg, but it is so deep, the ocean deep, it is not visible. You can sometimes see the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes you don't even see the tip of the iceberg, and the multiple factors which are to be considered as a burden to the patients and the society are: first is the hospitalization, and next is the emergency room visits, and the next is the ambulance, and the cardiovascular events is the biggest threat when the patient gets into hypoglycemia. And the patient may get into either heart attacks or the strokes, or sometimes the dysarthria, or sometimes the fatal deaths also are seen with this, particular in the elderly patients. And the falls and fractures are very common during hypoglycemia. This is the biggest problem we encounter in the pediatric group and the geriatric group. We find these falls and fractures, and it is a cumbersome situation that the patient has taken insulin. Maybe it's a mismatch between the food he has taken and the quantity of insulin, whatever it may be. And if the patient is not properly counseled, once he gets into this particular hypoglycemia, the elderly people, the geriatric and the pediatric population, they commonly counter these falls and the fractures, and this leads to the fear of hypoglycemia, and all leads to suboptimal control, and the productivity is low, and it interferes with the social activities, and the sleep disturbances, and the emotional well-being also being disturbed by this hypoglycemia. And on the right hand side you can very clearly see the direct cause and the indirect cause. The direct cause being the ambulance is the first one to start with, and second one is the physician's visit, and followed by the hospitalization, and it leads to increased frequency in self monitoring of the blood glucose levels, and the emergency care. These are the direct cause. And the indirect cause, this is once the patient gets hospitalized, naturally he has to get absent himself from his day-to-day work, and then somebody is driving a vehicle. That is a dreadful thing, that he may land up in accidents and all, and the work disability, that is he is not able to concentrate on the work. Once the patient gets into hypoglycemia during the work, he loses the concentration, he becomes very much irritable, he behaves in a very abnormal pattern. So the total work disability and work disturbance is there, and that leads to the cognitive impairment. The physical and the cognitive impairment leads to reduced working capacity, and this is very clearly depicted in this slide. Next slide please, Praveen. Next slide please. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Praveen. So the hypoglycemia impacts most aspects of a person's life. Yes, that is literally true, because in the last 3 decades of my experience, I have been seeing the patients getting panic and getting into some sort of complications, permanent damage to the patient. See, I have already mentioned, when the person is driving a vehicle, let it be a 2-wheeler or a 4-wheeler, whatever it be, even the bicycle also, the diabetes incurs restrictions for driving license in many countries. As of now, India, we don't have any sort of governance that the people on insulin should not be given a driving license. This is India. You can do all undo things in India. That's not a problem. Whereas in the American scenario or the Western scenario, especially you take UK and the most advanced countries like the Germany, the France, and the Italy and all, the license the license will not be renewed. Suppose the patient is on insulin, just maybe a type 1 patient or maybe a type 2 patient, he will the moment he is on insulin, they bar his the driving license, which becomes a major threat actually. Thereby they can avoid the road traffic accidents actually. So next becomes the social and the other sport activities, just for the fear of hypoglycemia, and this is the greatest disadvantages to exercise. They cannot even go for exercise, or they cannot even go for the games and sports activities. And the third is education and employment. Actually, some jobs, any risk of hypoglycemia is considered to be unacceptable, such as those involving commercial airline pilots. That's what I said, train drivers. And in the scenario like the Western scenario, they are definitely not given the driving license. Even the pilot, even the bus driver, or even the tram driver, or the underground tube drivers, they are not allowed this particular driving license. So that endangers the risk of job also. But okay, the passengers are safe at least. And even the travel also is very much disturbed when you travel, especially from one country to other country. Suppose from India you go to US, the time zone makes a lot of difference, wherein the patient cannot decide when to take, when not to take the insulin, and it becomes a big threat. Either he gets into hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. Most of the times the time zone difference, so you need to counsel the patient before once he makes a move. Like you need to counsel your patient who is on insulin when to take and how to maintain this, how to cross this barrier of time zone actually. So, and the personal relationships. Some relatives described being very physically afraid of their partner, maybe a life partner, spouse, or a relative when they had a hypoglycemic episode due to their aggressive and argumentative behavior and personality changes, because I've literally witnessed hundreds and hundreds of cases wherein the patient with hypoglycemia, the erratic behavior of the patient, like a mad monkey, he behaves like a mad monkey and a mad monk, and everybody is frightened by this behavior. They take off their clothes, they run in the streets and all. It's just because of the hypoglycemia, because of the cognitive impairment, because all of you are well aware that our brain doesn't accept anything except oxygen and glucose. When the brain is deprived of this particular glucose, they tend to get into the cognitive impairment, which makes them to behave erratically like a mad person. So that's very, very pathetic to see also. I've seen so many males and females stripping off their dresses, stripping off their saris, stripping off their lungis and pants and trousers, everything. They run like a madman, mad woman on the streets, which is very pathetic to see. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Praveen. Yeah, thank you, Praveen. I'm troubling you. And coming to the consequences of hypoglycemia. This is very important. See, whenever we try to control the diabetes, when the glucose targets are not achieved, we go for an intensification of the treatment, and that results in a hypoglycemia. And as far as the quality of life, there is a reduced quality of life, there is a fear complex, and the limited social activities just because of the hypoglycemia. And once they experience this hypoglycemia, they are so scared of hypoglycemia. So we need to counsel the patient in a very proper way whenever we put the patient on insulin, to not to miss their snacks, in between snacks and the main meal. We advise them to take small frequent meals. Everything is considered a meal. Like the morning we start with the biscuits or the sprouts with 1 cup of tea or coffee is called a meal, and the breakfast is called one meal, and the mid-morning snack in between the breakfast and the lunch, it is called the mid-morning snack, and the evening snack, the lunch, after the lunch, we ask the patient to take the fruit 1 hour after the lunch, and again the evening snack, somewhere around some 4:30 to 5:30, they take some the sprouts or some snacks with cup of coffee or tea, so that and the next will be the dinner, and after the dinner, going to the bed, the patient has to be on a late night snack, probably a cup of coffee or tea or milk with a fruit will prevent the nocturnal hypoglycemias. And the socio-economic factors, that is the losing the work hours and getting getting himself absenting from the work, and the work concentration is disturbed. So totally the working hours, the productive hours are lost, thereby incurring a huge economic crisis, and the social stigma, like they behave so erratic, that becomes a social stigma for the others or the relatives, even for the spouse also. It becomes, suppose the husband gets into hypoglycemia, the wife is so scared, vice versa, the wife gets into hypoglycemia, the husband and the kith and kin, they are so scared to see that panicky situation. So we should always counsel regarding hypoglycemia, how to diagnose hypoglycemia, and how to counter that particular need of our. That's what the majority of them will listen to us. But the biggest problem in the clinical practice, what I have seen is, in the last 3 decades, at the time of need, at the time of this particular hypoglycemia, they know how to make a diagnosis of hypoglycemia, they know how to counter the hypoglycemia, but they never realize that this is a hypoglycemic attack. That is the pathetic part. So next slide, please. And when it comes to the stringent diabetes control, that leads to naturally falls and fractures. You can clearly see the accidents, fractures, the joint dislocations, the head injuries, and maybe life-threatening head injuries and soft tissue injuries, what not, anything can happen. 1 second, Praveen. Yeah. And when you look into the cardiovascular manifestations during hypoglycemia, is the arrhythmias and the myocardial infarction or the myocardial ischemia and the cardiac failure, and these are all the complications when the patient gets into hypoglycemia. So the neurological complications, the cognitive impairment, I had been stressing on this cognitive impairment, convulsions, coma and paralysis, and dysarthria. It is not mentioned here. Okay, there are several cases where they had dysarthria followed by aphasia also, and the transient ischemic events, and the focal lesions, and these are all the consequences of hypoglycemia. If not properly counseled, if not properly explained to the patient and the attendants, these are all the consequences we face, and sometimes the patient may die also eventually. Until 2010, actually, until 2010, the American Diabetes Association also was in that particular impression that we should welcome the hypoglycemias in the patient who is taking insulin, and we should welcome the childhood fevers, for the reason that the childhood fevers are most welcome, because whenever you get the childhood infections during the infancy or the childhood, that leads to the development of antigen antibody complex, and that results in a very good the immune boosting mechanism. Thereby the antibodies are prepared, and in the adulthood he escapes from lot of infections. And this COVID pandemic also, why the death rate is so low in India is because of the childhood acquired immunity. That is maybe because of the BCG, and maybe because of the childhood infections, they got good sufficient of immune boosting capacity, so they are able to withstand with the COVID-19 pandemic. Though they are contracted with COVID-19, and 99% of the people are able to get out of this particular crisis. And so also the ADA used to say you should welcome the hypoglycemias, and after 2010 they just went retrospectively, they went thoroughly the thousands and thousands of studies with regards to hypoglycemia, and in 2012 they came to a conclusion that hypoglycemia is no more desirable. Hypoglycemia should not be warranted again at any cost, which leads to this particular several the mismatches, like the consequences like accidents and the cardiovascular bad cardiovascular outcomes and the bad neurological outcomes. So no more hypoglycemia is welcome. And earlier the cutoff of hypoglycemia was 50 milligrams per deciliter. It was defined as hypoglycemia way back in a couple of decades ago, and later on it became 56 milligrams per deciliter, and from 2012 onwards the cutoff is being raised to 70 milligram per deciliter. So this is the definition of hypoglycemia in an ambulatory patient. Next slide please. Praveen, next slide please. Yeah, thank you so much. So why, after all, why hypoglycemia matters? This is a very valid question. After all, it is hypoglycemia. You take some glucose, you take some 15 into 15 formula is there. Like that is what we generally counsel the patients. The 15 into 15 formula is nothing but whenever the patient gets into hypoglycemia, we ask the patient to take 15 grams of 15 15 grams of glucose dissolved in a glass of water. So that is roughly around 6 spoons of glucose to be dissolved, and wait for another 15 minutes to see. Am I audible? Praveen, am I audible?
You've been self-muted again, sir.
The gadgets are troubling us a lot, Praveen. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, all the participants. There are some technical glitches.
యాక్టివ్లో లేదా
Mr. Mohan, sir, your audio has been muted, sir.
Nay, am I audible, Praveen?
Hello.
అది యాక్టివ్లో లేదు సార్
అది అది యాక్టివ్ లేదురా.
Participants, sir, there is some technical glitch.
Yeah, sir.
That's all has
My sincere apologies to participants, Praveen. On behalf of me, you please. Yeah, there are some technical glitches today.
వచ్చిన సార్
Am I audible, Praveen?
Hello.
Praveen?
Yes, now you're audible, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, muted.
So,
Yes, you're audible, sir.
yeah, thank you so much, and dear my participants, my sincere apologies for the technical glitches. Please kindly bear with me, please. And why hypoglycemia matters? Because hypoglycemia is the most common and most serious complications of the insulin therapy. Yes. And for many patients and their families, hypoglycemia is the most feared and dreadful aspect of the diabetes treatment or management. The fear of hypoglycemia may compromise good diabetes control, and there is lack of understanding by both the healthcare professionals and the healthcare providers and the patients. So a better understanding can increase patient outcomes and the quality of life. That's what I've been repeatedly telling. It is the duty of the healthcare professional or the healthcare provider, that is the diabetes educators, the diabetes the nurse educators, and the on the part of the staff, on the part of the nutritionist, and the part of the doctor himself, to counsel the events of hypoglycemia, how to recognize hypoglycemia, how to correct the hypoglycemia. I was talking about the rule of 15, that is 15 grams of carbohydrates, that is 15 grams of anhydrous glucose has to be taken, dissolved in the water 200 milligram, and ask the patient to drink it. Wait for 15 minutes. If he has recovered, it's okay. If he is not recovered, the third 15 is again give him 15 grams of glucose, and he'll definitely recover. And if he doesn't recover, give him something to eat like banana or a sweet or a cool drink or which has got high caloric content, which increases the blood sugar so rapidly. Like you can give sugar also in your house, bananas you can give, and the next meal immediately you need to arrange the next meal to the patient, so that the patient totally covers. And always make it a point to give the doctor number to the patient. See, in my practice, all my patients, more than 1.5 to 2 lakh of my patients, they all have my number. They all have my mobile number. At any point of time, 24/7, they are at liberty to talk to me, so that I can guide them what is to be done at that particular hour of need. Just tell them to take glucose and the issue subsides. You'll not get into the next phase. Am I audible, Praveen?
Yes, sir, audible.
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Yeah, next slide, please, Praveen.
Audible, sir.
So these are all the factors which matter with hypoglycemia, and that is the reason why we have to consider hypoglycemia in a very, very, very serious manner. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Praveen.
Yeah, I'm on the next slide, sir.
Yeah, please. Take your own time, Praveen.
I'm on the next slide, sir. Maybe more and it is few seconds now.
No, it is not moving, Praveen.
Yeah. Is it, sir?
No, still it is why hypoglycemia matters. Na? This slide is prevailing, okay? You need to move on to the next slide.
I already moved on to the next slide.
You already moved, huh?
సార్ వచ్చింది.
Yeah. Thank you, Praveen. It has come. Yeah, it has come. Okay, just the one previous slide, please. No, one previous slide. No, just get back to the past slide, please.
లోగా కనెక్ట్ అయింది.
Next, the previous slide, yeah. And this is the one. Yeah, this is the one, Praveen. Yes, thank you. And one should understand what hypoglycemia is, and that is what understanding the hypoglycemia, the low plasma glucose causing the neuroglycopenic and the neurogenic and the autonomic symptoms which are relieved on raising the plasma glucose levels. That's what I said, the 15 into 15 into 15 formula of correcting the hypoglycemia. Next slide, please, Praveen. So, the clinically relevant definitions and levels of hypoglycemia. See, if you come here, like the way back I told, it was actually cutoff was 50 milligrams per deciliter, and later on it was moved to 56, and later on now the current is 70 in the ambulatory patients, not in the critically ill or hospitalized patients, or not in the hospitalized patients with severe hypoglycemia. See, the alert value for patients in the clinicians is 70 particularly. So the ADA earlier, the fasting plasma glucose target was something like, it was set like 70 milligrams to 130 milligram deciliter, and later on from 2012 it made 80 to 130, so that the upper level is increased by 10 milligram per deciliter, and usually it is asymptomatic at that particular level and requires rechecking, may require alterations in the insulin dose or type, and this is called the level 1, where the hypoglycemia, according to the latest definition, where the blood glucose, the plasma glucose level is 70 milligram per deciliter, is defined as the hypoglycemia, and this is the alert value for the patients as well as the clinicians also. See, whenever the patient comes with a report of fasting plasma glucose of 70 to the OPD, it is an alarming signal for the doctor that the patient is either missing the snack or the insulin is more. We need to titrate the dose. Either we need to down titrate the dose of insulin, or we need to advise the patient to take the snacks, and so that we can avoid the patient to get into the second level. Again, this is level 1, and level 2 is, see, you need to press again, I think. Yeah. Second level, that's what I said. It is actually 56 milligram per deciliter. Actually, it is this denotes impaired cognitive function, and repeated episodes cause reduced awareness and predict severe episodes, and this predicts the cardiac arrhythmias and the mortality. That's what I have been telling you since the beginning of my lecture. Mortality is associated with this the cardiovascular complications of the hypoglycemia, and level 2 is less than 54 or 56 milligrams of deciliter. That is, the potential terms include serious, major, clinically relevant and clinically significant. So if you can identify this for level 1, that is at 70. So the patient will not get into level 2. And again there is a next click please, Praveen. On the dangerous zone. So I'll tell you, I'll just tell you. See, we can divide clinically into 3 stages. The hypoglycemia can be clinically divided into 3 stages. The stage 1 and the stage 2 and the stage 3. Or you can say it mild, moderate, severe. And mild hypoglycemia, moderate hypoglycemia, severe hypoglycemia is. The mild hypoglycemia is at that particular point we call it mild hypoglycemia. When the patient is able to recognize that he is getting into hypoglycemia and is able to help himself by taking some food or some snacks or glucose or whatever it may be, that is called, without anybody's help, is called level 1 or stage 1 or mild hyperglycemia. And when it comes to level 2 or stage 2 or moderate hypoglycemia, this is defined as when the patient knows that he is into hypoglycemia but he is not able to help himself. Somebody has to, like the husband is in trouble, the wife has to help him by giving the glucose water or the, if not available, the sugar water or some the sweetened sugar sweetened beverages, and patient is not able to help by himself. He has to take the support of somebody else, their family members or the wife or the friends. This is called level 2 or stage 2 or moderate hypoglycemia. And when it comes to severe hypoglycemia, which is called the level 3 or stage 3 hypoglycemia, where the patient gets into like with the cognitive impairment, he gets into a sort of comatose condition. Nobody is able to help him. He is to be taken to the hospital nearby very immediately, contact the doctor, and doctor has to help him by giving the 25% dextrose infusion to start with. And once he gets back to this normalcy, you can continue depending upon the insulin he is on, depending upon the sulfonylurea he is upon. So, for example, insulin is a short-acting molecule, so they recover so fast. Whereas the only dreadful complication, the hypoglycemia we encounter is with the sulfonylurea, especially this particularly the glibenclamide. The admission should be for 72 hours. The patient has come to you using the glibenclamide and in a comatose condition, the level 3 hypoglycemia, that is in coma. You have to keep the patient, even though he recovers so fast with the 25% infusion, within minutes he gets back to consciousness, but it stays until 3 days. Once the sulfonylurea molecule sticks to the beta cell membrane, so it keeps squeezing the insulin in an enormous and erratic proportions that the patient must be monitored for 3 days. So this is level 3. The clinical evaluation is considered as the severe hypoglycemia, and there is severe cognitive impairment which leads to either convulsions. Already the patient is in coma. He may get into the cerebrovascular accident, and he requires external assistance or coma or seizure as defined by the American Diabetes Association Working Group. Yeah, next slide please. Is severe hypoglycemia a cause or a marker of increased risk of adverse outcomes? Yes, absolutely. The severe hypoglycemia is a cause or marker for the increased incidence of adverse outcomes. As we have already discussed, the severe hypoglycemia leads to adverse outcome events, which leads to the vulnerable patients. For long duration, the vulnerable patients means the increased age, that is the geriatric population, especially the patients above the age of 70, and the long duration of diabetes, and the duration of the insulin treatment in years, or the patients suffering from diabetic kidney disease, where the classical expression is the unexplained hypoglycemias. This is the term. Unexplained hypoglycemias, they are a classical feature of the chronic kidney disease, that chronic diabetic kidney disease, maybe stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 or ESRD. So one has to monitor all the parameters before initiating this particular insulin to see that the renal function is done, and baseline ECG is taken, and by seeing the serum creatinine, never decide the things. You always make it a habit by calculating the estimated glomerular filtration rate by any formula. There are multiple formulas. You can use. The best is what I use is the modified 2009 CKD EPI is the best one. And again, the severe hypoglycemia begets severe hypoglycemia, like hyperglycemia begets hyperglycemia. The vulnerable patients, they get into all sorts of nonsense like falls and fractures and the cardiovascular events and the neurovascular events, and the ultimate is death. So to prevent all this, it's high time. It is the need of the hour that we clinicians should concentrate on this particular hypoglycemia. We should start telling each and every patient, individual counseling is required for every patient with regards to hypoglycemia, how to recognize hypoglycemia, how to counter this particular, how to act at that particular hour of need when the patient is in hypoglycemia. These are all very important things. So in the busy schedule, you cannot say that I am in a busy schedule, I've got lot of patients, I cannot counsel. Then don't treat a patient suffering from diabetes, and you need lot of patients to treat a patient suffering from diabetes, maybe type 1, maybe type 2. You need lot of expertise, you need lot of wisdom, you need lot of experience also. Yeah, next slide please. Am I audible, Praveen? Next slide please. Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Praveen. It has come, yeah. And you can see in this bar diagram, you can see the hypoglycemia and the cardiovascular risk. The grayish one is the intensive glucose control arm, and then the white one is the standard glucose control arm. And you can see the percentage of severe hypoglycemic events in the ACCORD trial and the advanced trial and the VADT trial. You can see the ACCORD trial, the intensive glucose control arm had the incidence of hypoglycemia and cardiovascular risk to a tune of 16.2%. When compared to the standard glucose weight, it is only 5.1% according to this ACCORD trial. And the advance, it is 2.7 in the intensive arm, and in the standard arm it is 1.5, and the p value is significantly, like it is very significant, and the VADT also, and you can see the 21.2% of cardiovascular risk with hypoglycemia in the intensive arm, and 9.9% of hypoglycemic events resulting in cardiovascular risk is only 9.9 in VADT trial. So, am I audible? Praveen, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yes,
Yeah.
you're audible.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Shall I check, sir? You have been muted now. Yes,
Oh.
now you have been muted, yes, sir.
మళ్ళీ యాక్టివ్లో లేదు నెట్ ఇప్పుడు
Sir, you have been muted at your end, sir.
యాక్టివ్ మోడ్లో లేదు అది వచ్చింది సరే.
Yeah. Am I audible, Praveen?
Yes, audible, sir.
Thank you so much, and just move on to the next slide, please, Praveen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, yeah, thank you, Praveen. Thank you. See, what are the lessons we have learned from the landmark trials? let it be occurred or let it be advanced, whatever it may be. What is that we have learned from this, the great landmark trials? See, you can see in the left hand side the bar diagrams which are no previous events is in the light blue color, and at least one previous event this is according to the ACCORD trial, the mortality rate increased with occurrence of severe hypoglycemic events. You can see this percentage. See the dark blue, the navy blue is at least one previous event. You can see it is 1.3% in no previous events, and it is 2.8, and the hazard ratio is 1.41. You can see this, and the confidence interval also you can see, and then the next the standard treatment. This is with the intensive treatment on the left side. On the right hand side, you can see with the standard treatment, the 1% with this no previous events, and 4.9% with the arm of at least with one previous event according to the ACCORD trial. The mortality rate where the hazard ratio is 2.31, which is statistically very significant, very high, huge proportions of the calamities and the casualties, deaths are seen. And on the right hand side you can see the advance. Now we talked about ACCORD and we move on to the advance. The impact of severe hypoglycemia on the outcomes. You can very clearly see the major macrovascular events and the major microvascular events and the all-cause deaths and the cardiovascular deaths and non-cardiovascular deaths. You can very clearly make out all this. And the severe hypoglycemia was strongly associated with increased risk of range of adverse clinical outcomes. Next slide, please. So all the landmark trials like ACCORD, ADVANCE, and the VADT are showing us the incidence of severe hypoglycemia on the cardiovascular outcomes or the mortality outcomes. So this is treacherous and very horrible that the patient is not dying on himself or herself, rather we are contributing to their death.
Sir, your audio is again muted.
Yeah, that's what Praveen.
Vishnu wants to
Yeah. I'm extremely sorry for the technical glitches. Just a second, please.
డెల్ కనెక్ట్ చేసాం సార్.
అంటే చూడండి.
నెట్ డెల్ కనెక్ట్ చేసాం.
చెప్పి కనెక్ట్ చేయి సో దట్ అతను పార్టీ.
Sir, unable to listen to you, sir. Your audio has been.
వచ్చింది.
Am I audible, Praveen?
Now you're audible, sir. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just we'll move on to the next slide, please. So now this is a beautiful slide where you can see the classical paradox. See the non-adherence leads to, see, the hypoglycemia is the root cause problem, and it leads to lot of complications. And because of hypoglycemia, the patient tends to take more quantities of food, more snackings, and that becomes the biggest problem, which results in weight gain. Again, when the weight gain is there, again there is increase in the blood glucose levels. That amounts to high risk of complications, and which leads to like we need to find a solution for that. And the insulin, that is equivalent to a powerful medication for blood glucose, and again the problem is worsened by the weight gain, and the problem is again leading to hypoglycemia. So this is a vicious cycle wherein the patient gets into hypoglycemia because of insulin, and he takes lot of food to counter that hypoglycemia. he puts on weight, and later on the one hand, he gets into complications of diabetes, either microvascular or macrovascular, and on the other hand, the weight gain badly affects the glycemic control. It increases the blood glucose levels, and that leads to high risk of complications again. That becomes a problem, and it is a vicious cycle. At some point of time, we need to break this vicious cycle to come out of this particular paradox of hypoglycemia. Next slide, please. Yeah, now you can clearly see the risk factors for hypoglycemia. See, as I was telling, the most vulnerable group of patients who tend to get into hypoglycemia is the pediatric population with the type 1 diabetes mellitus, and the geriatric population with the type 2 diabetes mellitus, and some kidney problems I mentioned already. So now we go methodically. Like as I said, this is the young children with the type 1 DM, that is pediatric population, and the elderly type 2 DM who are very fragile, who easily tend to get into hypoglycemia, and the early pregnancy, and the cardiac failure, and the renal impairment. That's what I said. The classical phrase is the unexplained hypoglycemias. Whenever you come across unexplained hypoglycemias, that is, the patient takes the insulin, patient takes the food in time, very regular to exercise, very dietary regular habits, still the patient gets into hypoglycemia. That is called the unexplained hypoglycemias. You should immediately think in terms of diabetic kidney disease, the raised creatinine and the decreased GGFR, which leads the improper excretion of the insulin through the kidneys. So the accumulation of insulin within the body leads to unexplained hypoglycemias. Or the same is with the liver insufficiency also. This is related to the glycogen storage, because the pediatric and the adult geriatric population, they have got very little glycogen storage, so that they will not be able to counter this particular problem of hypoglycemia. So the hepatic glucose output is not sufficient to counter that. So that is one of the problems where there is chronic liver disease, maybe because of the hepatitis B virus or hepatitis C virus, or maybe because of the alcohol, and the patient gets into or because of the diabetes. Nowadays there is a big link between the diabetes and the liver, which is called the diabetic liver, and the hepatogenic diabetes, that is diabetes caused by liver. That's what makes the chronic liver disease, that is the stage from either alcoholic fatty liver disease, AFLD, to NAFLD, that is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and to the NASH or the ASH, that is the alcoholic steatohepatitis or the non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, and later on it moves on to the pre-cirrhotic stage and leads to cirrhosis and may lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. All this is termed as chronic liver disease. So chronic liver insufficiency is also associated a big risk factor for hypoglycemia. And now we are coming to the most important topic, like the glycemic variability. This is very, very important. In the center of this slide you can find the glycemic variability. Glycemic variability is nothing but it is defined as the fluctuations in the blood glucose control in a given day, that is during the given 24-hour day time, the peaks up and downs of the blood glucose, that is called glucose variability, as well as the related to hypertension, it is called the blood pressure variability. So it keeps fluctuating unless otherwise we monitor meticulously with this SMBG or CGMS, that is self blood glucose monitoring, or the continuous glucose monitoring system, will not be able to make out this glycemic variability, and HbA1c will not give any clue to this glycemic variability. And there are certain lacunas of HbA1c. HbA1c gives an average for the exactly 2/3 correlates with the 1 month previous blood sugars, and the next, that is 66%, is related to the previous month, and the rest of 33% of this particular the HbA1c is correlated with the previous 2 months. So HbA1c will not give the exact classical picture of glycemic variability, and it doesn't give you the hypoglycemias also. These are the limitations of HbA1c. One has to keep in mind, all the clinicians treating diabetes, they have to keep in mind this glycemic variability and the blood pressure variability. So our aim should be just not to see the fasting and postprandial. You should make it a point to go for a 7-point formula of monitoring. Apart from the HbA1c once in 3 months, one time the patient has to be tested for fasting and post breakfast 2 hours, and the next day, and they go for a pre-lunch and post 2-hour lunch blood glucose levels, and the next day or the next visit, you should go for a pre-dinner and post-dinner 2 hours glucose values. And the 7th point is morning fasting 6:30, that is AM 6:30 AM in the morning, in the evening 6:30 PM. This is the 7-point formula of monitoring the blood glucose, where you can capture all the 24 hours figures. So this gives you the rough approximation of the glycemic variability, where it is peaking, where it is dipping. So this is very important. We'll talk about glycemic variability in the slides to come. And the risk factors again on the right hand side depicted. See, the duration of diabetes, it definitely matters a lot. As the duration of diabetes is longer, the patient tends to get into the autonomic neuropathy, and there is a term called the hypoglycemia unawareness, where the patient is not able to recognize that the patient is into hypoglycemia. That is the most dangerous complication of the autonomic neuropathy, which we commonly see in this particular diabetes patients, especially the type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. They get into hypoglycemia, yet they are unaware of it. They just get into coma. They land up in some complications. And in the down you can see the history of severe hypoglycemia and impaired awareness of hypoglycemia. That's what I called the hypoglycemia unawareness is impaired awareness of the hypoglycemia. And the alcohol ingestion, especially when you take alcohol, you get a rebound hypoglycemia. So please avoid alcohol. Along with that, you please avoid all the tobacco products. And the intensive glycemic therapy with sulfonylureas and insulin, what we commonly practice in our scenario, the Indian clinical setting, where the WHO has accredited us as the low resource setting countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and all our South Asian continent is we generally tend to use metformin and sulfonylurea, and add on we add insulin, and the patient gets into hypoglycemia. This is one of the causes for severe hypoglycemia. Either we need to decrease the dose of sulfonylurea, and the patient is on glibenclamide or glipizide, better you switch the patient to either the glipizide, the glycoside or the glimepiride. And religious and the cultural variations like overnight fast. We also see the basic funda I would like to tell you is, in diabetes there is no fast, there is no feast. You always try to remember, no fasting, no feasting. Okay, this is very important. So at any point of time, you cannot overeat, you cannot skip the meal, undereat. All this must be avoided to avoid the severe hypoglycemias. And the vigorous exercise is also one of the reasons why we get into hypoglycemia. We advise exercise certainly to all patients suffering from diabetes, whatever it may be, the type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes or gestational diabetes or the pre-gestational diabetes or even the other forms of diabetes like monogenic diabetes like MODY 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or any form of other this thing to decrease the insulin resistance, to improve the insulin sensitivity. We advise the patient to go for an exercise like walking for 1 hour, that is 60 minutes on 7 days in a week, unless otherwise the climate is that's raining cats and dogs, or when the patient is not feeling well, you can take a drug holiday. But strenuous exercise leads to what it happens is the glucose uptake by the muscle will be very much increased, so that the patient suddenly gets into hypoglycemia. This is the mechanism behind the exercise and hypoglycemia. So these are all the factors which contribute to hypoglycemia, maybe a mild, maybe a moderate, maybe a severe, maybe a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, or level 1, level 2, level 3. Next slide, please. Now we have come to the very important aspect of this. We completed the first chapter. The very important aspect is the hypoglycemia, and next is the glycemic variability, which is very, very important. Now let us try to understand what glycemic variability is. I have already told you, per se, the definition of the glycemic variability is the fluctuations, that is the up and downs, the peaks and the downs, that is the hyperglycemia excursions and the hypoglycemic episodes which occur during a 24-hour period. That is, it may be on daily basis or intraday variations also. The per day variations and the intraday variations is called glycemic variability, and we talk something about glycemic variability. We have to tackle this particular problem of hypoglycemia and glycemic variability. Then only we will be able to do justice to the patient, so to avoid the unnecessary complications, unnecessary this thing, and get back the patient to the normalcy, that is reasonable fasting plasma glucose of 80 to 130 milligrams per deciliter, or the post lunch less than 180 milligrams of deciliter, or even the random, that is called casual plasma glucose, that is also less than 180 milligrams per deciliter of this thing. Next slide, please. And an HbA1c of around 7 or below 7. If the patient is not vulnerable to hypoglycemia, so you can keep it as 6.5 to 7. If the patient is they are vulnerable to hypoglycemia, keep the targets somewhere around 7, and it fluctuates depending upon the conditions, the comorbidities. Like the patient has got the macrovascular complications like stroke or coronary artery disease, that is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or the cardiovascular complications like the acute coronary syndromes or the chronic coronary syndromes or the heart failure, whatever it may be. So these are all the factors which vary, and now you can classically see the glycemic variability, the definition, but that's what I said, fluctuations in the blood sugar levels. So in a given day time, see, you can see the up and downs, and the red is hyperglycemia, upper red one is the horizontal is the hyperglycemic border, and the lower one is the hypoglycemic border, where the patient is getting into constant fluctuations of hypo and hyper, the peaking and the dipping. This is called the glycemic variability, and the glucose fluctuations in a day is called glucose variability, otherwise known as glycemic variability. So next slide, please. So these are all the points. So 1 second, Praveen. Yeah, 1 second, please. See, this blood glucose is given in millimoles per liter, please. This is not given in, see, why they have given it in millimoles per liter, I don't know. We don't use this because the European continent and the UK and the Canada and the US, they use the millimoles. If at all it is related to blood glucose, you have to multiply the millimole with 18. You have to multiply with 18. You just get the our milligrams per deciliter. Now you can see these are all the hyperglycemic episodes. The arrow mark showing up and the arrow mark showing down are the hypoglycemic episodes. So this is the classical feature of the glucose variability or the glycemic variability. Next slide, please, Praveen. And it's a diagrammatic representation of glycemic variability.